Here's why the Bitcoin halving is simply not priced in. We'll be talking about the post-halving price appreciation that we tend to see in Bitcoin's price action after halving events. We'll be talking about that in a lot more detail, so subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in the future. Like this video if you enjoy content like this going forward, then let's dive right into it. So every time we've seen halving events occur every 4 years in the Bitcoin protocol, we've seen fantastic price appreciation. So starting off with 2012, in late November, we'd start to see a parabolic phase of price action and uptrending to new all-time highs and beyond, searching for a new all-time high in price discovery before topping out in the bull market peak. Of course, going into this parabolic phase in the cycle, we tend to see some slowing down and consolidation, as we spoke about in yesterday's video. This is normal price action going into the halving and even months after the halving, because that's all preparation for the uptrend that emerges afterwards. So 2016, for example, in July 2016, we saw price pull back going into the halving event, consolidate for a while, for actually a few months, before preparing for another move in parabolic fashion to new all-time highs and beyond. And the same thing happened in 2020. So we had that COVID-based black swan crash before the halving, and then we recovered fantastically well going into the halving before experiencing a period of sideways price action. And you can see from this chart right over here that this sideways action isn't even really noticeable, because in the grander scheme of the major parabolic uptrend, you can't really see sideways squiggles. It just looks like price action increasing and uptrending, and it's this sort of period of consolidation that precedes fantastic, phenomenal parabolic price action towards the upside. And we've seen the same thing happen also this year. So April 2024, for example, we've seen already fantastic price action to new all-time highs already. But also going into the halving event, we had that ETF catalyst. So we had a double catalyst, which is why we got to new all-time highs already around the halving event itself. And that's something that simply doesn't happen in the pre-halving period or around the halving period itself. So if we think about old all-time highs, we tend to see several months of sideways price action after the halving before we break to new all-time highs into a parabolic phase. And we've seen that in the past so many times. But in this cycle right over here, we reached new all-time highs before or around the halving itself, which is historical and monumental, but it is preparing us for the next part of the uptrend, and that's this part of the uptrend. It's the parabolic phase in the uptrend that we can get excited about and look forward to, because that's simply what lays ahead in Bitcoin's future. So you can see here that this is current consolidation at around old all-time highs, and it's this consolidation that simply tends to occur after the halving, as we'll see from this chart, for example. So after the halving, we tend to see a reaccumulation phase. So this post-halving reaccumulation phase here in red just gives us an idea that sideways price action within a range tend to occur. And it's the same thing in 2020, right after the halving. So this red region here denotes this reaccumulation phase, and we saw reaccumulation take place in two stages. The first reaccumulation range and then the second one, which altogether is that reaccumulation phase before transitioning into this green squared region, which is the post-halving parabolic upside phase of the cycle. And that's something that lays ahead as well. And when it comes to breaking out from this reaccumulation phase, we tend to see breakouts from here 160 days after the halving. We're currently around 126 days after the halving. So that just gives us a month, over a month, before we finally see a potential scenario for breaking out beyond this reaccumulation range high. And historically, it's been 160 days after the halving where we break out from this reaccumulation phase. That has been the case after the 2020 halving, but in the 2016 halving it took 150 days. So whether it's 160 days or 150 days after the halving, it gives us a good historical reference that this should be in late September, early October. And October tends to be a fantastic month for Bitcoin and uptrending price action anyway. And when we talk about this reaccumulation range, we can see here quite clearly that any sort of downside deviation below the reaccumulation range has been a fantastic bargain buying opportunity. And we've seen many reaccumulation ranges over the course of this cycle. Downside wicking, this orange circle showcasing fantastic bargain buying. Here as well, we had 2 downside wicks into bargain buying opportunities. The same thing right over here, downside wick into a bargain buying opportunity before reversing into an upside movement. The same thing here as well at the bear market bottom. So we're seeing that this reaccumulation range, we've seen downside wicking, but even candle bodied downside deviations, even downside wicking on this recent capitulation wick from a few weeks ago. These are still downside deviations. They are slightly changing based on what we've seen before, and we're seeing a lot of these opportunities pop up already as well in this reaccumulation phase. We've seen 1, 2, and 3 separate phases where we've seen downside deviation. We've seen less of those opportunities in the past, and maybe that's why we're taking these opportunities a little bit more for granted, because there are 3 of them. But these downside deviations are fantastic opportunities to hold for the future. And even if we look at previous cycles, for example 2020, we haven't really seen any downside deviations below the reaccumulation range. Maybe in this instance, but that was few and far between. And the fact that we're seeing the same thing in these reaccumulation ranges just showcases to us that we tend to see fake breakdowns in these reaccumulation ranges. And we're also seeing many of them in this phase of the cycle. But it's really important not to take these for granted, because we might be running out of those downside deviations because we're 126 days after the halving, getting close to that potential historical breakout in September, early October. So you can just see from this red square here that we've already progressed a phenomenal amount already, and we're very close to a potential breakout. We only have this slither of time left, and that translates to a month, just over a month, getting us closer to this parabolic phase in the cycle. We're very close, getting very close to a monumental breakout, a historic breakout. But first of all, we need to reclaim the bottom of this range, and we've seen this happen many times in the past over the course of this reaccumulation range already. We tend to see downside deviations, and these downside deviations finish once we reclaim this reaccumulation range low, and that enables moves to revisit the range high of this reaccumulation range. And we don't know how many more rejections will occur at the top of this range. We've seen 3 general rejections, but of course at some point we have to break beyond this 70k region of resistance, and we'll probably do that. It's not clear if we have one last rejection from the reaccumulation range high. We'd be very lucky if we do, but these rejections are really getting thin. They're really running out, and at some point in the future we will simply break out into essentially parabolic price action towards the upside like we've seen in the past. And this is something we can prepare for, but we can only prepare by reaccumulating at boring periods in the market where the market is simply stagnating and moving sideways, especially in periods of downside deviation like we see here. Those are the bargain buying opportunities. It's this reaccumulation range here that will enable the next parabolic rally to new all-time highs and beyond. So the halving isn't priced in, but not everybody is convinced by that. But I definitely want to be on the side where I have a position and I'm ready to ride the parabolic upside that comes inevitably and lays ahead in the future. The next several months in crypto are going to be fantastic, and it's better and it's wise to be a part of that roller coaster. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in the future. Like this video if you enjoy content like this going forward. I'm Rex Capital, and I'll speak to you in the next one. Speak to you soon.